fellow travelers, and welcome to the Diversion Stars podcast. How are my loyal listeners? Thank you for your continued support. And as always, hit that subscribe button, everybody. We have an amazing show for you all because joining the mothership is Devon Graye. You know him as Young Dexter on the show Dexter. He now appears in Nope, directed by Jordan Peele. Now come join me as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Graye. Thank you so much for coming to the Traversing the Stars podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's totally my honor, sir. I really enjoy Nope, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about it.
I'm excited to talk about it too. I haven't been able to talk about it for a really long time, so it's fun to finally have it out and be able to talk.
Is it hard to hold that secret for so long?
Yeah, you know, it was funny because obviously I'm in the movie such a small amount. I only worked 5 days, but I still read the script and I still was around the sets and I knew the whole story. So it was, yeah, I mean, so many friends and family would always ask questions and I was just so afraid that something would get leaked and that I would be responsible. So I didn't tell anybody anything. Even my husband didn't know anything about the movie really at all. So it was like, I am actually really good at keeping secrets, but this was obviously such a fun thing to talk about. So it was sad to not be able to talk about it till now.
So how often did you just drop hints like that Jordan Peele? That's a really great director. I wonder what it's like to work with him.
I mean, that people knew that I was in the movie, like friends and family knew that at least that I was doing a Jordan Peele movie, but they had no idea what it was about. They had no idea what my character was. Like all of that was secret. So yeah, but I mean, at least I could get to brag about the fact that I was in the movie.
That is a nice brag to have because everything Jordan Peele has touched has been gold from, Us, Get Out. I mean, everything he touches is just golden right now.
It really is. I mean, I'm still, the movie's out now and I'm still kind of in disbelief that I'm actually in it. Like it still hasn't really hit me that I got to work with someone like that. And because it also, the experience on set, it was obviously a huge $68 million movie, but the people were so lovely and so grounded. And Jordan himself is such a good guy and so normal that it sort of, you forget that you're in this giant movie when you're doing it because it feels so intimate. And yeah, it felt like a bunch of cool friends that I got to hang out with for 5 days.
And when you look back at your career so far leading into Nope, does this feel like you like a pinnacle of a journey? Does it feel like the journey is just starting?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, my career has been so up and down in terms of a lot of false starts, a lot of times where I thought like, oh, this will be the movie that, I'm the lead of this huge film. This is going to be, and then the movie disappears and goes nowhere, or, a TV series that looks promising and then it doesn't get picked up. And so I think at this point in my career, I don't really look ahead. I don't feel like at any point I've been at this for 18 years. So I think it definitely isn't just beginning, but it is, yeah, I mean, being in this movie, I mean, obviously is amazing, but I don't look at it as like, this is now going to launch a career that I am dreaming of it, and I also don't look at it as the pinnacle, hopefully too, like, hopefully I'll keep kind of working and growing and getting to do different cool things. But yeah, because I've just been a working actor. Like I've never been a big star in any way. I've always just been like a very consistently, sometimes inconsistently working artist. And so this is definitely probably one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of. But I never know if I'm ever going to act ever again. Like after every project's over, I just always think, oh, maybe that was it. And if this was it, then it was a very nice way to go out.
Well, I'm sure 100% positive this is not gonna be it at all. So going back a little bit, so when you were in the American Conservatory Theater for acting, when you chose that, how did you envision the kind of roles you wanted at that point? What did you learn about the craft of acting from attending the conservatory?
I'm so glad you asked about that because I literally last night was just on the phone with my teacher from the American Conservatory from years ago.
Oh,
this
wow.
man, Craig Slate, who's amazing and who gave me so much confidence back in the day that I was a very shy kid and I had just moved to America from England. I didn't know anybody. I lived right outside San Francisco, and I loved acting, but I hadn't really got to do a lot of it.
Mm.
And I auditioned for a production they were doing of Our Town, the Thornton Wilder play, and I'd always loved that play, and I'd always loved the role of George Gibbs. And I ended up getting that part in the play at ACT in the Young Conservatory Theater there. And Craig Slate called me himself to tell me, and he was the director of the Young Conservatory at the time, and he really instilled, just like, he made me feel like, oh, I think I can maybe do this. Like, I think I can maybe be serious about this, because this person who I really admire has confidence in me. And so yeah, so it was a lovely experience, and it sort of just happened a little bit by accident, because I got cast in one of their shows, and then I started to train there afterwards, and learned a ton of things that I still employ today. And also Chelsea Peretti, who is Jordan Peele's wife, she went to ACT, and she knows Craig Slate really well. So on set, when I was with Jordan Peele, we would talk about Craig Slate and ACT, and so it's kind of a cool full circle moment with that.
So when you're in the acting conservatory with this great professor, what is he teaching you about the craft? What is the line between what you can learn and what you must experience in acting?
Oh wow! Again, that's such a good question. I was so young back then too. I was 17, and I think there was so much that I look back on now, the concepts that we explored that I couldn't quite grasp back then, that now make sense. And so I think there was, honestly, that experience for me more than anything was just a confidence builder. It was just learning about how to use my voice. Like, there was a voice and speech class that I remember taking, where I was really afraid of my own voice for a long time, and just getting to make these crazy noises, and like very classic what you think of with an acting studio, where everyone's on the ground making animal noises, and that sort of thing that sort of a lot of people make fun of. But it was good for me, because I got out of myself, and I was able to kind of be big, and not be so afraid to make noise and to be seen. And then there were improv classes there that I took that were wonderful as well. And then Craig Slate himself teaches a class that is to prep kids that are leaving the Young Conservatory and going to college. And I took that class, but I ended up not going to college. I told Craig eventually, like, I think I'm just going to move to LA. And right now, while I'm young and I look young, like, try to start a career in the business now, and see if that could work. And I think Craig thought I was maybe crazy, and was like, okay, all right, well, let's see. And then, and I look back and I wonder what my career would be if I maybe had gone to a proper college after that experience, and studied. I mean, who's to say what it would look like? But I did get very lucky when I moved to LA, and I started working pretty consistently as a 19-year-old playing 14-year-olds on different shows, because I looked like a baby.
Right. So and I think what I find most interesting is that when you're talking about comfort, getting comfortable with who you are, getting comfortable with your voice. Now, as an actor, can you play somebody else until you're yourself comfortable?
Oh, you mean, like, can I play? Is it more comfortable to play, like, pretending to be somebody different, as opposed to having to be myself? Is that easier?
Also, kind of the idea of, before you can get comfortable in front of a camera playing somebody else, do you kind of have to feel comfortable with who you are and get find relaxation with who you are, find confidence with who you are first?
I think so. Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I think that for different people, for different actors, they might answer differently. But I think for me, I think, a big part for me too was that I was like a closeted gay kid, like, that was very afraid that would get exposed, and that people would see that, and that I would do something that seemed too gay, or, these things that were scary to me, feeling like I was going to be exposed. And so I think that was probably my biggest insecurity, was just in life, I would often be very small, because I didn't want to give things away. And so I think when I would approach acting, I could also be quite small. And as an actor, you can't really afford to do that. You have to be able to be every version of yourself, and as big and loud as you can. So I think for me, the answer was yes. Like, I needed to be comfortable with myself and feel an amount of self-love to some degree, to be able to then I think too, like with acting, you want to have your ego be as tamed as possible, because there's so much rejection and
Mm,
there's so many harsh notes that come your way, and there's, that I think if you're not okay with yourself and your ego's not somewhat balanced and okay, then I think it can be awful. And I know early days for me, I definitely had a lot of like ego flare up moments where, because I felt so insecure about myself, any
mm,
little criticism was like the end of the world. And
mm.
so yeah, so I think acting class and acting schools in general are great for just exercising that and getting a lot of that stuff over with and making a fool of yourself, and then seeing that you're okay, and that nothing bad actually did happen.
The more I do these interviews, the more I'm surprised by how many actors seem naturally to be introverts. Because you would assume, because of the profession, they would all be these gregarious, extroverted individuals. But I find that it's not actually true at all. And I mean, why do you think?
Oh man, I mean, I don't know why, but I find it the same way. I find a lot, and I definitely have worked with actors that are extreme extroverts, and they're the life of the party the minute they enter the room. And because I think acting takes all types and needs all types to make a
Mm,
full story, and you need that. But I do find there are a lot of people that I think get into it maybe because there is something about getting to pretend that there's someone else that gives them permission to get to do things
mm,
that in life they're too afraid to do. um, I think for me that was probably the case. Like I was allowed to get to be these parts of myself that in the real world I wouldn't be caught dead, doing. So, um, but that's a good point. I mean, I do find that often is the case, and I'm always comforted by that, because I think sometimes as an actor I can feel like I'm doing something wrong out in the world by not being
mm.
super big and being so introverted. I often think that's maybe backwards, or that it doesn't make me a true actor or
Mm.
something.
Well, it does pose the question then, those you're talking about who are the life of the party in the rooms, is that the acting then that they're doing as well, just off camera? Or is that actually who they are?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would be hard. I mean, I'm sure for some that's the case, and then there are other people that I think it is genuine. They genuinely
Mm,
just are gregarious, and um, yeah, like I said, like I've it's hard to sort of pin down someone that is the quintessential actor, because I have worked with all types that are across the board. All the different versions of humanity you can find within the acting business to some degree. Um, and then of course you have the stereotype actor who's like narcissistic, and who's that whole side, which definitely is true and real, and I've seen a lot of that. Um and and I think to a degree there has to be some narcissism in acting, because you have to sort of believe in that moment that your emotions and what you're doing is the most important thing in the world in that moment. Because if you don't believe that, you're going to be shy and hold back and not
mm.
give that part of yourself and not believe in that part. But obviously you have to balance that, because no one really wants to hang out with a narcissist. So,
Well, one thing that a role that I read about that you're in, you when you're as one of your earlier roles, you played the teenage Dexter on the hit show Dexter, which is a phenomenal series. I really did truly love the show Dexter. So what was that experience like for you?
that it was amazing, and I still look back on that like it was one of my first jobs that I booked when I moved to LA. I was 19, and I don't even think I really knew what the show was. When I don't Probably nobody did, because it wasn't successful yet. It hadn't been made. Um, but I was playing him at like 14 or 15 in the flashbacks on the show. And um, I read the book. I remember I got cast, and then I read the book, like Darkly Dreaming Dexter by Jeff Lindsay. And I really right away understood this guy. And I don't think I knew at the time why I understood it. But again, looking back, I realized, oh, I know why I was able to play this teenager who had a secret, and who was so afraid of it getting out, and who felt like a darkness in him that he couldn't control, and didn't know what to do with. And I look back to the fact that I was like, again, like a closeted gay kid who grew up in a very religious home, who was terrified at all times that this dark part of me was going to get seen. And so in a lot of the scenes that I had as teenage Dexter were scenes where I was talking about that very thing, and feeling so horrified and having self-loathing, but also charged by this part of myself. And obviously in real life, I wasn't desiring to go kill people, but I knew what that felt like to have that secret. And so I think that's probably something they saw in me when I auditioned, and why it translated as much as it did, because it came from a true place, even though I didn't consciously know that at the time.
So when obviously Dexter is played by Michael C. Hall, the adult version of Dexter. So when you're playing the younger Dexter, you know what he's going to be like as an adult. You know what he becomes. You know that doing that kind of stuff probably has altered him a little bit as an individual. So you're playing him at a teenager. What parts are you thinking? I need to excise that part because I'm not there yet as a character. This part I need to definitely play up because that still is in continuity of where he would be at this point in his life.
Yeah, I remember thinking that I wished I could have spent some time with Michael a little bit, just to kind of get. And I'd seen him in 6 Feet Under, so I knew who he was as an actor, but I didn't quite know what he was going to do with the character because we were filming it at the same time. So I never really got to see, until season 1 aired, I never really saw, apart from some table reads, I never really saw what he was doing with the part. And I remember trying to practice his speech pattern a little bit, and little things that I wanted to make sure fit somewhat within who he was. But then I also, and I don't think I thought about this back then, but now I know that who we are when we're a teenager is often very different than who we are when we've had these life experiences and we've changed and grown. And so ultimately, I don't think it even was something I had to be overly concerned with. But and I remember too, it was weird. Like, we have different color eyes and like moles in different places on our faces. And like, so that all of that was funny back then to me. I kept thinking like, oh, they should give me contacts, or they should like cover up some of these. I wonder, but they did. Ultimately, I guess they didn't really care. Because I think our heartbeats were similar. I think that was the thing they were looking for, is just a similar sense. And I have a lot of darkness in me as a person. So I think that was something right away they clocked.
It was kind of interesting as a fan of the show. I don't remember recognizing any of that. We must have got so sucked into the performances, we didn't even notice the minor details of it all.
Oh, that's really good, because I would always think about that when I was watching. I'd be like, oh no, I don't really look like him there. Oh no, that's so. They did a close-up of my eye, and now it goes to his eye in the present day, and like they're different colors. And so that's great that you did not notice that. I obviously was very preoccupied.
I need to go back now and watch it and notice all this.
I mean, you will, once, now that I've mentioned it, for sure. I'm sure you'll see.
So another interesting thing about you is that you're also a writer. You have written for the television show called The Girlfriend Experience. So how did this experience come about, and are you planning to do more writing for TV and film?
Yeah, I mean, primarily these days, I'm mostly a writer. That's sort of what I get hired to do. I write a lot of studio films for a lot of horror movies for studios. And they mostly never get made. And that's sort of the name of the game, is that, as a writer, you get hired and do draft after draft after draft. And then eventually the studio puts it on the back burner and you wait for the next one. And so that's a big part of my life now, is doing that. And I love it. Like, I feel very in my element as a writer. I think because I'm an introvert, there's something really nice about the solitude of just being with myself and having conversations out loud with imaginary characters. And, that all of that is it feels very good to me. And I think my experience as an actor has definitely made me a better writer. And then vice versa. I think now that I'm writing, I definitely feel like my acting is better. Yeah. And so I think, I with The Girlfriend Experience, I had a script that was on the blacklist called Allison Adams. And I wrote that as a spec that went out to studios back in the day, back in like 2016, I think. And then it landed on this thing called the Blacklist, which every year they publish this list of like the highest rated unproduced screenplays that circulated that year. So it's quite an honor, and it was pretty amazing to be on that. And then the showrunner for that year of the show, Anya Marquette, had read that script and really liked it, and she called to see if I would like to co-write the season with her. And so that's sort of how that came about. And then since then, I've just continued to write movies for nothing I can really talk about, because the funny thing about being a writer is that it's such early stages all the time. And again, like most of these things never see the light of day. So I could probably mention 5 things right now that would be obsolete in the next year. So So yeah, but I'm very grateful that I get to be a writer and have that window into the industry as well.
So when you're doing the writing now, are you acting out your characters?
Always, yeah, always. Yeah, for sure. It's a very and I think that's my biggest strength as a writer is character and dialogue, because that comes from the acting part of me, where I think structure can be the harder thing for me, because that's the part of the brain I don't access as much. So I have to really try harder to structure properly and all of that.
So to go up to the present, you are now in the movie Nope. So how did you get involved with the project? You play Ryder Muybridge.
Yeah.
So what was exciting you about the opportunity to be in this movie?
Oh man, I mean, I was like I said, I still sort of am in shock that any of it happened. Jordan Peele had seen me in a movie that I was in that was at Sundance called I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore, which was this movie Mike Macon Blair wrote and directed. He's this amazing writer director who I love, and he cast me in that years ago, and it was at Sundance and got a lot of exposure, and then was on Netflix, and Jordan Peele had seen that, and I guess something about my performance in that sort of clicked for him and was like, oh, that's who I think should play this motorcycle guy. Because I think he was struggling to know exactly the tone and the vibe of who that person should be. And so I still had to audition though. They sort of sent over the scenes, and I made an audition tape, and then the next day they were like, yeah, he wants to meet you on Zoom. And so I had a Zoom with him, and which was obviously surreal in a lot of ways. And he had done his homework on me too. He was like, I see you're a screenwriter. Like, I'd love to talk to you about screenwriting. And so it was very cool to like right away feel like there was like a mutual understanding of certain things that he was just, again, he's so normal and so lovely and easy to talk to, that it was a great first meeting. And on that meeting, he was like, look, you have the part, like, I want you to play this part. And we talked through who the character was going to be. And he was like, are you okay with the fact that we'll never see your face? You're going to be under a helmet the whole time. And I just thought that was so cool. Like, again, in my acting career, I don't think I have any massive aspirations anymore for any, like, I think I just take every job as like such a gift when they do come around. And so I was thinking, like, I would literally be like a tree in the background of your movie. Like, I don't care that I'm not going to have my face shown. Of course I'll do this. And but I was concerned only because he kept saying, like, you're so good at playing these sociopath characters. Like, that's, which is, can be taken as not a compliment, but I definitely thought it was a compliment. And he was like, so that's the vibe that I want for this. And then I remember saying, like, yeah, the only thing I'm worried about is when I play those characters, so much of it is in the eyes and in the, my face is a huge part of conveying that. Do you think that we'll get that across when you don't see me? Like, is it with just the voice and just kind of the body language? And he was like, oh yeah, I think we'll be fine. Like, I believe you can do it. And so I remember being worried about that when we were shooting. Like, I hope that this is still conveying that person. And, so I would think about careful, like, head movements on with the helmet, just like those little twitches and things that could kind of feel alien, ironically. And Jordan kept saying too that he saw this character as the true alien in the movie, like the true sort of idea of the human evil and the person that's detached from humanity. And so I would think about that as well, and especially when it came to the voice and the kind of flatness that the character has.
So what was it like to discuss screenwriting with Jordan Peele, who, like I said, right now is one of the modern masters of screenwriting right now?
I mean, it was, again, so surreal. Like, it was just I remember one of the first things when I was on set, he was like, so what are you writing right now? Tell me about some of your scripts. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't know what to say that is going to measure up to like the great right. And, it was a funny, yeah, I don't even actually remember what I said when he asked me that, but again, like, I can't say this enough. He treated me like such an equal and such a collaborator that, and I'm not used to that, honestly. Like, I did think getting on the set with a director that's that famous and that is that established, a lot of the time when I work with directors like that or actors like that, they're very inaccessible, and there's a part of them you can't quite access, and he's just not that way at all. Like he just could not have been more like, again, I keep saying this, but very easy to talk to. So we talked about screenwriting, and I asked him some questions like, hey, I've always wondered, like, when a studio does this or they say this, like, what should I do and what should I, and he gave me like lovely advice, and just made me feel like good about past decisions I've made as a writer. And it was a nice yeah, that was definitely a highlight of my life so far, honestly, was that day getting to talk on set about that.
I think it's very interesting when you're talking about Jordan Peele and how approachable he is. And I do kind of wonder if part of it has to do with the fact that he is also an actor. I mean, obviously he's not as known now as an actor because he's just blown up as a director, but he has tons of acting experience. Does that, you think, play into why he's so good working with actors and so approachable?
I'm sure that it does. I'm sure being on the other side for him, I'm sure he knows what it feels like when you have a director that is cold or isn't giving or is cryptic in their direction. And I'm sure he's learned from that, like how not to be. And then also from, I'm sure, the great directors he's worked with, I'm sure he's picked up things. Yeah. And then I part of it's probably also just his natural personality and who he just is as a person. Yeah, because I will say too, the direction that he would give was always so specific and so actionable, like, where that's, I think, more rare. Like, a lot of directors might know what they want, but they can't actually verbalize it and put it in a way that feels like you can take it in and then perform it. Where every single thing he would throw at me, I always easily thought, oh, I know how to do that. I know exactly what he's saying. And I think that's also just a testament to why he's so prolific. I think that's a big part of it.
Well, kind of interesting. I found an article when I was, doing some research for the role, and from a Screenrant, and it's kind of stupid, but I think it's funny. They ranked the characters of note by their intelligence, and they had Ryder, Muybridge dead last in intelligence. Now,
I saw this. Yes.
Now, in your opinion, is Ryder Muybridge, is he just dumb, or is it like some sort of like blind vanity that he has? I mean, when you read that and when you think about it, are they accurate? What do you think?
I think, of course, I think very accurate in that he does the dumbest thing you can do, which is just like lie in the path of the thing and try to photograph it. And I guess, the DP character does that also, the Holst character. But it's different. I think, I think that that Ryder is, again, he's a TMZ guy. He's like a paparazzi, which operates from this place of literally just exploiting people and things and giving no shits about it. And I think that is, yeah, I think that just puts him in a place where, like, he's literally willing to sacrifice his life just to get the shot. Like, that's all that matters to him. And that is kind of what it is for those real guys. Because I remember some of the prep I did before I shot was watching documentaries on paparazzi. And there's one that's really great that it's like they follow like a kid who's like 14, maybe even younger than 14. He's like 11 or 12, a little kid paparazzi, where his whole life is being this paparazzi. And it was a fascinating documentary because there's a part of this kid that is so desensitized already to anything and he puts himself in all kinds of dangerous positions, and all his life is all about getting this shot. And I wouldn't say he's unintelligent. It's just that he exists with this one focused place where everything else falls away. Like, this kid didn't have friends. He didn't have, and I kind of imagined the Ryder character growing up being that kid where he's just obsessed with the one thing and he's sacrificed, given his whole life away for the shot. And that is ultimately what happens to Ryder, is that he dies as a result. And his dying words are like, give me my camera, as he's going.
Well, one thing I'm fascinated about the movie as well is that the movie opens with a Bible verse, which reads, "I will cast abominable filth upon you, make you vile, and make you a spectacle." Now, when you're thinking about the movie and you're thinking about what it is and what it represents, especially where Ryder fits into it all, is that line specifically about Hollywood? Is Hollywood just inherently something that makes an individual, they say, vile or a spectacle, or is those involved that makes Hollywood what it is?
I think it's an innate thing that exists in us as humans. I think is that, you know, there's a part of us that wants to take and to uh, put ourselves up as with whatever we can, and sort of uh, yeah. I think it's Hollywood is sort of the zoomed in version of that, I think, but I think it exists in a lot of, like, even like Instagram culture and social media is a big part of the spectacle and of wanting to be seen and wanting to use what we can to put ourselves highest and rate ourselves the best. And so I think, and it's interesting, I see the movie in so many ways there is such a parallel to social media culture, and I
Yeah.
love that he didn't actually include social media really in the movie at all, but yet it is such a, even myself during the day, like when I'm on Instagram, I'm like, oh God, like I'm being a whore right now for attention. Like, oh God, like, you know, just these, it's so easy to let that come out as humans. Um, and then I think too, with what the characters in Nope are doing is they want to capture the spectacle. They want to be involved. And then obviously with the Jupe character, what he's doing, selling tickets to this thing and trying to, uh, you know, capitalize on this creature the way that, like, he's already capitalized on this other creature from his past, the chimp that did this heinous, horrible thing. And there's something about that that's so interesting. And I think that there's an instinct in us. I remember watching a girl, God, I forget when this was, and I don't know who it was, but it was on Instagram at some point. She literally was like filming her plane as it was crashing, like out the window. And she kept filming herself like, oh God, oh, and then she like filmed, but she sort of seems disconnected from that it's happening. And it's sort of important for her to film this. And I don't think it was a serious crash. I don't think anyone died or anything, but I remember watching that and being like, wow, that is such an interesting impulse in us now as people, that we want to capture that thing because it's going to give us something. You're going to see those little hearts go up on Instagram or whatever. And we're addicted to that now. That's a very big part of how we operate. So I think the movie, there's obviously so many things the movie exposes and does a really great job at being a metaphor for. But that, for me, that's kind of what I think about the most.
I do find that fascinating because with celebrity, I guess people are just obsessed with it in such a degree. I also use a lot of IMDb when I'm doing interviews and finding people, and the fact that you have a rating system for individuals, it's kind of like, on the one hand, totally irrelevant to what you're there for, but the other hand, such a vain thing to exist.
It really is. And I wish I didn't fall prey to that. And I don't even know I don't have a single actor friend that doesn't fall prey to that, who's not like, oh, wow, you know, my IMDb rating this week is in the top like 1000s. Like, this is so cool. Like, you know, it's people talk about it, people, or they pretend that they don't look at it, but then you know that they do. You know, IMDb is funny for that. I've definitely fallen prey to that. I remember that, like, they also use it by how they're going to like show your birthday. Like, if you're going to be in the top like birthdays that year, every day the page shows who are the top, like, I don't know, 20 birthdays or something. And for many years, I was always like in there because my rating must have been high enough. And then this last year I wasn't, and I was like, oh God, I'm not in the. Oh no! And then it was so stupid though. Like, it's so horrifying that I even care. But yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not a celebrity, but because I have a podcast, I'm telling you, I know you tell me an episode, I can tell you how many views it has at this point. Like, this has that many views. It's like, it shouldn't matter. The show is, did you do a good episode? Did you enjoy yourself? Blah, blah, blah. Of course I did. What's your view count?
Right. I know, but again, that's an innate thing in us as humans. I think it must be tied to our survival in some ways. We need to feel like some part of our evolution is like, I need to know I'm gonna outlive everybody else. And
right. We're not gonna get kicked out of the tribe. We're well liked. Yeah. We're the most well liked member of the tribe. We're not getting removed.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how has it felt to ride the excitement of Nope that's being created, and what doors do you think that's opening for you?
I mean, it's been so cool to be involved in a film like this, and especially too, like, the producers were even so sweet to give me like billing at the top of the movie, which I was not expecting at all. And I've had so many friends and family reach out being like, your name's like right in the opening credits. That's so cool. And So that's just been fun. Like, it's just been fun to get to, and it's such a good conversation starter, that movie in general, because like what we just had, like the whole conversation about social media, and it's just cool to be involved in a project that sparks such like healthy discussion. And so that's been fun. And because I'm in the movie, I think a lot of people will often ask me like, well, what's your take? What do you think? And obviously I'm not in Jordan's head, so I don't know what he really was thinking with a lot of these things, but it is fun to discuss. And then as far as the doors that it might open, I hope it opens some. I think it is funny to be in a movie that's this big, but be sort of hidden in the movie, be like under a helmet the whole time. Because I've had friends also text me being like, I saw your name in the beginning, but I guess they must have cut your scene because you're not in the movie. And I was like, well, like watch it again and listen very carefully. Maybe you'll hear where I am. So, but yeah, I hope it opens doors. I never really know with this career in this industry, like what, like the Sundance movie I did, I thought that was going to open huge doors, and then 5 years went by, and I was like, oh, I guess it kind of just didn't do anything. But then, of course, Jordan saw it and cast me in his movie. So, yeah, I think I'm always excited and hopeful to be surprised by what things might come about.
But whatever you do next, you come back on the show, you talk about that as well.
Yes, I will. I would love to come back. This has been so lovely, and you're an amazing host and interviewer. So I would be very happy to be back here anytime.